This is happiness, to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.
Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of Mood Prep. My name is Dave Nixon. Today I shall go into this idea around positive self-talk. I definitely would have crossed paths with this before. That's not what I want to say. I would have come past this and spoken about this before on the podcast for sure. It's definitely stuff that I've coached to, and definitely stuff that I have been coached to and worked through. And that's this idea of positive self-talk. It's like, well, positive self-talk is often seen as a good thing. It's talking yourself into something. I suppose often the positive intention behind positive self-talk is a form of motivation. It's to overcome negative self-talk. These are obviously some of the reasons. Some can vary. Sometimes positive self-talk can be to prove someone wrong. Like, it's not always black and white, as in positive self-talk is inherently intrinsically motivated or has an intrinsic motivation behind it. But the really interesting thing about positive self-talk is that it presupposes negative self-talk, right? Now, people might go, no, there's just this general default, and then you positive self-talk yourself into something. It's like, well, sort of. The challenge around that is that why would I need to positively self-talk myself into something that I didn't already want to do? Like, what's holding me back there? And this is a really interesting concept. Like, it's not black and white, and that's really something that's important to understand. What can often be black and white within this concept, though, is understanding that if we're using positive self-talk to drown out negative self-talk or to prove negative self-talk wrong, often the negative self-talk, by the way, isn't actually your it's not your voices, it's your parents, or it's a caretaker, or maybe it's a school teacher or a coach. And so you're trying to, drown out the frames that they gave you based on their experience of life and their opinion as an adult. And so that's probably actually really what needs to be addressed, because it's not really about going, I'm going to prove them wrong or prove, whatever. It's just like, fuck, that time's gone. Let's leave that where it was and not bring it into right now. And let's look at this current situation. It's like, well, although we may have, due to past interactions, conditions on our esteem and our confidence that sometimes we may even be blind to, the reality is that the negative self-talk isn't true. It's not true right here, right now, right? And so when we actually use positive self-talk to try and combat the negative self-talk, we're giving the negative self-talk validity. We're trying to combat it, which means that it's there. The reality is that we need to see the negative self-talk as something that's no longer true. It never was true, right? It was true based on a real fragment of opinion, so to speak, someone's experience. And maybe it was yours in the face of someone else. But the point of all that is to as soon as you start to see this negative self-talk come up, and maybe this desire to positive self-talk, it's like, step back out of both and see the negative self-talk and realize that this isn't actually true. So question it. That's how you figure out whether it is true or not. It's like, well, where does this actually belong? In what areas of my life is this true? Is it true in all areas? It's only true in these areas. Okay. Do I have the ability within me to prove this wrong in this area? Or is it something that I still need to work through? Something that will allow me to leave the belief of this stuff holding me back in the past and learn to be here now without the negative self-talk, without needing positive self-talk, and actually moving towards the things that I really want to do. Because it's like, if you need to be motivated to do something, and motivation's an action, by the way, I'll get to that in a minute, but if you need to be motivated to do something, then just don't worry about it, because it's not important to you. And so unless you want to recognize why it's not important to you, even though you may consciously want it to be important to you, like that's worth going into. And that's a complex thing, but it's still worth going down. But the reality is that if you need to be motivated then it's not important to you long term. And so motivated, I've spoken to this before, but to clarify again for either new listeners or maybe, we need to hear things multiple times. Like repetition is beautiful. It really is a mother of all skill. It's how we develop anything. And so motivation means to move towards action. And so motivation is actually, it's a verb, effectively. It's an action. It's a doing word. You are motivated. You are motivating. But we often use this as in, I'm watching you and that's motivating for me. Or you push me is motivating for me. Whereas it's actually me doing something to move towards action. And so when we start moving, that's when we start getting momentum. So we don't have motivation, then action. We have action, then motivation. Right? And so often with the whole positive self-talk, trying to drown out the negative self-talk, a lot of the time, maybe it's not about either one of those things, and maybe it's about just getting through to action. And so once we do that, it's like we have motivation, but we don't need it anymore. It's just because we're moving. It's like, I'm really motivated. It's like, it's not really about that. You've ever heard people talk about that? How do you stay motivated? Some people might answer it, but otherwise it's like, I don't really feel motivated. It's just really important to me. It's like, yeah, you got your priorities straight. That's pretty simple. When we start doing shit that we don't really want to do, then we often have to maybe talk ourselves into it. Or maybe it is something that we want to do, fair enough, like really consciously want to do, but we just got other shit in the way. It's not about combating the negative self-talk. It's about realizing that it's bullshit. And once again, that's a complex thing, but it's you got to start somewhere with it, and you got to start with wherever you're comfortable starting. And so it's okay to start and fumble through that and stumble through telling people where your boundaries are and, saying no and all these things that maybe you have found difficult for quite a long time in your life. Maybe it's yes. Maybe you said no to like so many things in your life that you're just so used to saying no that you don't realize you're saying no to yourself. You're saying no to experiences, right? Maybe it's that, because we can't say yes without saying no, right? You can't be doing positive self-talk without identifying and recognizing negative self-talk, because otherwise it's like it's the duality of it all. And that's why it's both positive and negative, and neither, because you are not positive, you are not negative, right? It's not those things. These are frames of reference, perceptual filters around our current understanding of our reality and experience, or experience of reality. And so my offer for you moving forward is to start to see when you're struggling with something and there's a form of negative self-talk, it's to actually just step back and just see it, because you learnt that somewhere. Well, you weren't born with that. You learnt that somewhere. And since you learnt that somewhere, where did you first hear that? It's like, well, I first heard it there. It's like, okay, well, why is it important to you that you still have it here now? And like these are powerful questions, right? And this is testing why it's true or not. It's like, okay, do you then have the capabilities to do what it is you want to do in the face of all that difficulty? And if the answer is no, then there's probably a confidence or esteem issue, not necessarily a positive self-talk like solution for the current situation, because it's often fluff. Like the positive self-talk is often bravado. It can be kind of deflated pretty quickly, whereas when I see the negative self-talk as bullshit, then when people go to criticize and push that negative self-talk onto me, it's like, well, I just don't accept it. I had this conversation recently with someone. They're like, you can't say that to me. I'm like, yeah, I can. I told him my thoughts on something, and they said, don't say that to me. You can't say that to me. It's like, yeah, I can. I go, just don't wear it, mate. Just don't accept it. But you can tell me as much as you want not to say it, but I'm going to say it because it's what I think, and you're not changing my mind just by telling me not to say something. It's not offending you. I'm not harming you. I'm not doing that. But this is the reality of it, is that take responsibility of what you'd really truly deem to be true and honest, but also question whether you're right or wrong. Like, be okay with that. Really be okay with being wrong and seeing a wider, broader point of view. But I guess the key thing there is wanting to have a wider, broader point of view, hey? Like, wanting to be like, well, what am I missing? Now, I watched the Q&A, ABC Q&A with Jordan Peterson and a few other people on the panel. And what was interesting is one of the questions that somebody asked, one of the ladies, and Jordan was like, "I'm not quite too sure what your question is," and she's like, "Of course you're not." And he's like, "Well, rather than belittle me, actually reframe the question for me. And so when we can come from that angle, right? When we come from this angle of like, okay, well, don't belittle me for not seeing what you're seeing. Actually help me see what you see. I'll hold my position as well, but let me have a look at all angles rather than just mine or just yours, right? Because we're looking at the truth, not trying to be the truth. But the truth of all of that is that the negative self-talk that you potentially run will not go away with positive self-talk, because it's the same thing. It's bravado, it's false. It's getting rid of it and realizing that you've always had the power. You've always held the truth. You've always had the self-worth. You just got lied to in the early days, and it's time to take that back. And on that note, team, I'm out. If you found this podcast beneficial, it would mean the world to me if you'd pass it on to someone else that you think would also find it beneficial. If you haven't already, jump on Facebook, search Mood Prep Online, and come and join the conversation. Continue this kind of conversation. If you've got questions from here, I'd love you to put them in there. I'm more than happy to pull it apart as best I can. Otherwise, you know the deal. Until tomorrow, peace and pizza. Kick today in the dick. Slay the dragon. I'll see you soon.
to be everything at once. Be unblinded, be unlearned, be unbridled and unburned.